Hello, I'm Martin, an author from the south of England. This year I've managed to draft 3 novels in 11 months. Let's look at how. So, at the end of last year, my friend Malcolm approached me about working on an ongoing series together. We set the goal of writing 3 books in 2021. This was something that I would not have considered even a month prior. Whilst I had written some novels, the amount of story required for an ongoing series was simply unimaginable at the point until I realised it actually wasn't and sat down and just did it. We kicked around ideas for genre and decided on space opera, mainly because it's the thing I read more than anything else. It's where I live. Rather than plan a story, we began planning a universe, similar to how you would write a series bible when writing a TV pilot script. The idea was to come up with characters, locations and situations that would allow us to continue generating story, rather than simply coming up with a story and trying to hook a sequel after it. The initial character ideas we had for the most part remained in place throughout the process. We made a point not to give anyone final names, and most have changed at least once whilst we have gone on. The thing that went through the most changes was the setting for the series. We didn't initially want to simply put everyone on a single ship. The idea was that we would have a mining planet that would act as an outpost for humanity in this sector, but we ended up setting it on a luxury liner known as the SS Olympic, a ship that has most definitely seen better days, much like humanity's empire itself. It's currently in decline. Like series such as Deep Space Nine or Babylon 5, we wanted to flesh out a single corner of the sector where our characters would reside, that the audience could come to get familiar with, like Hogwarts or the Belt in The Expanse, rather than try and set up an entire universe. It had to be somewhere where humanity had an outpost and where other races could come and intermingle, which is how I came up with the title Project Gibraltar, after the British enclave where Europe and Africa meet. The first thing I wrote for the project was a would-be reader magnet. In hindsight, this was a great exercise in fleshing out the universe, but less successful in writing a reader magnet. It focused on a character who would have featured in a side plot in the first novel, which is usually a good way to go with reader magnets. Unfortunately, as we continued to develop the story, that subplot ended up being dropped. On the 22nd of February, I began working on the first book. The draft was completed in 7 weeks, and like all good first entries, it sticks closest to the traditional hero's journey than any of the other instalments. Every week, we were having writers' conferences to keep developing the story and give feedback on scenes as they were written. Initially, this was whilst I was walking home from work in the cold and dark and rain, until we figured out a time that could work with both our schedules. I decided to stop drafting after book 1 and spend the rest of April and May outlining the second and third books back to back. I realised I would lose momentum if I were continually stopping and starting, and it made sense to just take the time to figure out the roadmap that I could follow for the rest of the year. I made a point to break down exactly how many chapters and scenes these novels would require. If you're familiar with my story sheets method, you will know that I use a spreadsheet and a jelly mould to do this. I looked at the various books in the genre and made a note of the usual word count and how many chapters they had. Now, I know that many people flinch at the idea of this kind of structured writing, seeing it as a paint-by-numbers formula rather than a guideline, but these are not hard and fast rules. If I feel a chapter needs to be longer or shorter, I will tweak it. But at the outlining stage, it gives me structure to work with rather than a blank page to stare at. Knowing that the books would be around 21 chapters, with about 4 POV characters, allowed me to break everything down in a way that I could outline it relatively quickly. I then started book 2 at the end of May and finished it mid-July. I took a couple of weeks off to rest before cracking on with book 3. Book 3 took the longest to write, mainly due to other things happening in my life that slowed everything down. I endeavour to write every day when I'm on a project, but I don't make it a rule. There's plenty in life to get stressed about without beating yourself up for not getting writing done. However, where possible, I did try to write even if it was only 10 minutes a day. I figured that even when I am at my most exhausted, I could go for 10 minutes, and when I couldn't, I didn't. Towards the end of October, I was starting to get a bit frustrated with how long it was taking, and decided to double down and get it finished. So, in the spirit of NaNoWriMo, I aimed for 2,000 words a day, and after a week and a half, I had a finished manuscript. Ironically, if Book 4 had been outlined, I would probably have been quite content to keep going at that pace for a while longer. Writing is like a muscle, and the more you use it, the better you are at using it. The worst thing you can do is take too long off between projects. I always find I'm at my slowest when starting fresh. So, we did it! We have 3 manuscripts written, and there is even a prologue that has been released to the public. Subscribe to the newsletter if you want to check it out. Link below. So next we will continue editing Book 1. Malcolm has taken his pass at it, and now I'm taking a second look, and then I will write a reader magnet, properly this time. Anyway, I'm Martin. If you like videos on writing, like and subscribe!